Hey guys, it's Quana. I apologize in advance for the fact that my camera looks incredibly fuzzy. I'm not worried about lighting. I've got shadows going on behind me, but just got finished watching How to Get Away with Murder, the series finale. I'm trying to like dab my eyes a little bit because they caught me at a little bit of a tear right at the end. But I just wanted to go ahead and like to breathe. Wow, I had a knot in my stomach like the 30 minutes before. It stayed there probably until the last, I don't know, it's still there a little bit. I'm still a little shaky. But let's go in on some of the things that we got in this series finale. I will say, as a quick review of the season and also the finale, I do feel like it was rushed, especially here at the end. I would have liked to have potentially had not necessarily an extra episode, but perhaps a little bit of a lengthier series finale, especially since they've done some season finales that actually were a little bit longer than this. I think they could have either started and not have aired or aired Station 19 earlier, started this at about 9:30 and given us like at least an hour and a half, because I do think that there were some things that we didn't see. But let's talk about it. Okay, so I guess and I'm not going to go in any kind of order, so just spoilers for the whole episode. If you did not get a chance to watch it live and you have to wait until tomorrow for it to come on Hulu, come back to this video tomorrow and see everything that I'm going to go over, okay? Because I'm spoiling the whole thing. Because at the end, I'm going to start with the end. We got the reveal that it wasn't Wes, but it was, as many of us suspected, Laurel and Wes's son, Christopher. Christopher Castile, and he is the one who shows up at Annalise's death. It is the future, and he has become a lawyer and a law professor, and he is now teaching at Middleton College, and he is teaching the criminal law 101 course, or as we have come to know it, How to Get Away with Murder. And Annalise has apparently been his mentor, which is amazing. In review of that moment, however, I do feel like they aged all of the cast members extremely, extremely, extremely. During her closing argument, it's revealed Annalise is 53. I kind of thought that she was like late 40s, but she says she's a 53-year-old woman. That being said, I mean, they aged Laurel. Laurel looks like she's at least in her 60s or 70s. And she has to only have been in her 20s when she is in college, perhaps 24 at best, if not a little bit younger, because you typically go to law school right after undergrad. So that would have put her at 22 finishing undergrad, and then maybe 22 to 23 when the show starts. So I felt like to age her at least 40 years and have Christopher looking like Wes, that the aging process didn't work. But it was revealed, we got to see who all was at her funeral, and we saw that Connor and Oliver were there. They had been aged, that Eve was there, and I was wondering if we were going to get Eve to show up in this final episode because she's been so important to Annalise's story. So it was nice to see that they brought Famke Jensen back to play Eve. And I want to say, was there anyone else at her funeral? Eve, Connor, Oliver, Laurel, Christopher. So Michaela was not shown at the funeral sequence. And neither was Tegan, because it is revealed that she and Tegan eventually do end up together. And they have a long life together, but Tegan dies before Annalise, which is why she's not at the funeral, because Tegan died before her. Probably the biggest OMG of the night was who got shot. So who got shot, and many of us suspected that this person would die in the episode because they had too much blood on their hands, and because of what the storyline has brought them to was, of course, Frank. But how he was killed and what happened, so he went after the governor, shot the governor. So the governor is, I'm assuming, dead. Frank was then retaliated against by one of her guards, so he was shot. But OMG of the night, Bonnie was also shot, um, which Bonnie runs over to Frank, tries to stop him. And so she gets shot in the process. And I don't know if it was a shot from Frank or a shot from one of the guards. But the whole time that she's trying to console Frank, trying to calm him down, trying to beg him to stay with her, she is bleeding as well. And so that is not shown until Annalise makes it over and it is found that she is there. Now, how they're going to avoid tying this back to Annalise, because here you have two people connected to Annalise involved in the death of the governor. I can't even imagine how they would have managed to avoid that. But we just have to imagine in our minds because, of course, we don't find out how she avoids being implicated in that death. So we lose Frank and we lose Bonnie. And that is really what had me like, I was like, oh, I didn't know I was going to feel some kind of way because I already kind of thought that Frank and Bonnie couldn't end up with a happy ending. They both had killed. Directly, everyone who is responsible for a major murder on the show is now dead. Wes killed Sam. Bonnie killed Rebecca. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember the little girl's name. Lila, that Frank killed. Frank killed everybody. Frank killed Lila. Frank killed Wes's grandfather. Frank killed everybody. So Frank was gonna die, but it was still sad, and it was a very touching scene. Hopefully he died forgiving Bonnie because he does kind of plan to leave. We see, of course, that really obviously he knew he was going to die. You can't attempt to kill the governor in broad daylight and think you're going to live. So all of the actions that he took in this episode were to bring him to that point. So giving Gabriel, his little brother, that money. I so kind of wish he had said to him, "Our Father," and let him know that that was his dad. And I also kind of wish that we had gotten a glimpse of Gabriel at the funeral because we didn't see Gabriel. And I would have thought that at that point, his mother would have told him about how he helped Annalise and they would have kind of uncovered all of this. But we don't see Gabriel at the end. So I thought that was kind of a bummer. Nate, we see in a flash forward that Nate ends up somehow getting awarded money from his father's wrongful killing and is able to open up a center to help people who are coming out of incarceration and whatnot. I believe that's what it is. And that was a nice, touching moment. I don't know how I feel about the semi-redemption arc that they gave him all in this one episode because we did see him kill Xavier. We do, of course, know that he killed D.A. Miller. So he went to a very dark place and actually has real blood on his hands. But I think it would have been too controversial for them to have let him go out with actually like him having somebody who died. So he does end up living. He forgives Annalise, and Annalise kind of forgives him, and they make amends, and he seems to have a good life, or is on the road to recovery. And I guess really he didn't kill D.A. Miller. I mean, that was Bonnie, right? So he really is only responsible for Xavier's death. Yeah, he's really only responsible for Xavier's death. So I guess it's like only one down, you know what I mean? That's not that bad, right? Okay, so we covered Wes, we covered Eve, so we got a chance to see him. We find out what happens with Frank. We find out what happens with Bonnie, Oliver, and Connor. So Connor wants to confess. He wants to go to jail. He wants to pay for the crimes he's committed. He does not want Annalise to go to jail for what they have done because Annalise does not have actual blood on her hands. And Connor at this point is the only one out of the remaining 5 that I still like because at least he has a conscience. I did not like the scenes between him and Oliver where Oliver's trying to convince him to cut a new deal. It just took so much away from the innocence that we've seen of Oliver the whole time. And it made me really not like him in those last moments as much because even though it's like, yes, you love your husband and you want your husband to be free, you know just as good as everyone else that all of this is shady. Annalise really isn't responsible for this. So for them to be testifying against her, and not just testifying against her, but like legit lying against her, it's shady. It's completely shady. So I was really disappointed that they went that route and kind of put a little bit of a dark spot on Oliver and Connor. Oliver threatens Connor that he is going to divorce him if he doesn't try to negotiate a better deal. And then he goes and asks for a better deal, I guess, or does something with them. And Connor is offered the same deal as Michaela. Well, surprise, surprise, he turns it down and he slaps Oliver with some divorce papers. Now, in the end, there's this whole little scene where Oliver's like, tell me you don't love me. Tell me you don't love me. And he can't say it. And so, Oliver's like, I'm not going to divorce you. But this is a critique, so I'm kind of intercutting with my review here. The acting in that scene was just, it wasn't great. And we've seen some scenes with Oliver where he cried and you felt it. You felt it, that it was really, really happening. I think he got a little bit better at the end with the scene where Connor was actually being sent to jail, but it wasn't great. It wasn't great for me. And that was just too much for me. So I mean, am I happy that they're still together? I mean, yeah, I guess. I like that Connor found his moral high ground and that he wanted to own up for the stuff that he took a hand in. And the fact that at the end of the day, he was there. He helped cover up the death of Sam. And he was there when they killed Sam. And he's had a hand in a lot of shady stuff, more so probably than Annalise in terms of like actual violent acts. I don't know. But I was glad to see him take a moral high ground. Now we gotta get to this little girl, Michaela. Asian Naomi, I'm disappointed in you, sis. I'm disappointed you were going to sell our girl Annalise up the creek. Oh, she is cutthroat in these streets. Her and her daddy. First of all, I was kind of shocked that we didn't get Solomon in this episode. At least at some point. I don't think we saw him. And at least if they had some point where like he was there with Michaela. Like, why would you not be there with Michaela? So I thought that was kind of shady boots. Has he even really claimed her in public? Anyway, she ends up securing the bag and she becomes a judge. So, I mean, kudos to her, and we get this whole diatribe of the amount of abuse that she endured, and that's why she felt no remorse toward fighting for herself. I know it's not the show's job to teach lessons, but I did feel like that's just such a slippery slope. Like, because of my own abuse, I'm allowing someone else, not just allowing someone else to take the fall, but actively working against them in a way where she actually lied. Like, she legit, like said, Annalise and Wes were banging, and we know that wasn't true. So, yeah, I'm not too happy with my girl Michaela at all. So at the end of the day, Laurel is the only one who actually like confessed and did the right thing. And we get to see that she is at Annalise's funeral at the end. And obviously she has raised Christopher knowing Annalise, which is so good because we had that moment at the beginning when, I think it was either the beginning of this season or was it season 5 where she says like Wes was her son. Like, she looked after him from afar his whole life because of what happened to her own kid in trying to help his mom. And it's nice to see that she somehow had a role to play in Christopher's life. So that was really, really sweet. But I mean, I don't really care for Laurel, so I, was okay with that. We got Cicely Tyson, you guys. I was so worried we weren't going to see her for this episode, and let's just be real. Cicely Tyson is like 95 years old. This could very well be her last role ever. I don't know if she's making any movies right now, but this could be her last role. Well, okay, we know Tyler Perry is going to keep the good to Cicely working for as long as possible. But this could be one of her last major TV roles ever. And so I was glad to see that they brought her into this episode. I kind of wish that she had done a little bit more. All we see her is crying and asking for her baby. She does show up and she asks Annalise if she's going to fight. It's this weird scene where she's asking Annalise if she's going to fight, if she's going to win, if she's going to bring dishonor to the Harkness name. But then she goes on to say that it's in God's hands. And so it's like, wait a second. Either you're putting all this confidence in your daughter and saying she is the catalyst for getting out and being found innocent. She is the person who's going to do it, or you're giving it to God. Like, it was just weird because it felt like she was putting a lot of pressure on Annalise in that moment. And then she kind of dialed it back and said, oh, but God's got you, baby. And that is just like a black mama. Let me tell you, that is just like a black mama. But I was just so glad that we got the good Cicely Tyson for one more time as Miss Ophelia. I hope they gave her the biggest round of applause on set. And then in a kind of scary foreshadowing, we see where she has passed away and Annalise and her sister are at the funeral. Of course, we know like that's going to happen. So who's left, if anyone? We know the governor gets killed. Of course, we did not get that deleted scene that they did with Asher, where Asher shows up in Connor's dream. I actually think that scene would have gone a lot further to show like Connor's mindset. I wish they would have found a way to add that in there. But it was also kind of cheesy. I think they could have done it in a better way to, like, where he could have said, like, not that he was going after Connor, but like he blamed Connor for his own death. So thoughts. I didn't like the time jump and the way that they show Annalise dying, obviously at a very old age, but we get all of those years of her life where, you know, I guess she's happy. She's with Tegan, which we like, and she has had found love and things like that, but she's one of those characters that you want to know what she's doing. Like, is she still practicing law? Are they just traveling? Like, what is she doing with her life? She's one of those characters that I would have loved to have about 20 more minutes of this episode just to get a greater sense of, like, I don't know, moments of like, how does she move on beyond like Bonnie and Frank? How does she move into the stage where she's allowing herself to love Tegan and be around the world with Tegan? I wish we would have gotten more of that. So I didn't love that. Again, that aging makeup, they should have called the people who do this. No, they shouldn't. I love This Is Us, but they shouldn't have called them. I don't know who they should have called, but it feels like they went really cheap towards the end, and that just wasn't it. It wasn't it, y'all. It just wasn't. Everyone looked like they were at least 60 or 70 years old, but Christopher, still looks to be the age he is, which I'm going to assume is about 30-ish. You know, he was in Harry Potter, so he could be 32-ish, but because Rob Pattinson was in it, and he was in the fourth movie, and he's 34, so he's about 3 years younger than me. So I would say that he's got to be about, so Wes, it's got to be about 30 in real life, but he's playing definitely like a 20-something year old, right? I just can't understand. So they aged everyone 40 years, which means that Annalise would have been like in her 90s, right? But he would have been in his 40s. I mean, I guess you can look good at 40. I don't know. It just didn't match up. So I wish that they would go back to the drawing board on that one. Someone should have said, yeah, the makeup's not really matching up here, or it was because they wanted, but at the end of the day, it was because they wanted to bring Wes back at all costs. And I like that we got Kristoff. I don't think, obviously, he would look that much like his dad. I mean, let's just be real. He is a biracial child. Actually, to be frank, he's not even a biracial child, because biracial implies two races, and his mother is a European, European Latina. So her lineage is more heavily on like the European. Well, she's actually supposed to be, I think, French and Latina at the same time, I think, right? And then you've got, so heavy on the European blood. And then you've got Wes, who is biracial. So their son would only be 1/4 black, but he looks exactly like his dad and has a nice butter pecan complexion. So that just doesn't mean, yes, people pop up in the diaspora and they pop up all kinds of shades, but for that coloring on him, it wasn't realistic, and I would have rather had had him be a vision. Maybe they could have even done it where we see him coming and what we're actually seeing, because they played around with the POV in that scene whenever they showed it throughout the season. And so the POV could have easily have shifted to maybe Eve, because remember Eve knew him as a little boy, or even to Laurel. And maybe because Laurel is so old, she sees him and he looks like her dad, and then we actually see him side by side and it's a different actor who just looks somewhat like Enoch, I think is his name. I always mess his name up, so forgive me in advance. But so I thought that those were just little things that just messed me up and took me out of like the believability of the moment. But I do think it was a good way to end the show. Definitely a Shondaland production, because they love ending their shows with people on the beach. And it was a very much like a how Stella got her groove back, we go to the beach kind of moment. And then of course we get Annalise in the lecture hall watching Christopher give his lecture to his students, which was that was a nice touch. I was completely fine with that. So that was a very nice touch. So yes, I thought it was, overall, I would give it a 7.5. It was a good series finale, and I always love when we feel like we've gotten a complete story. Are there some things that we don't have answers to? Yes, and that will be for another video when it's not so late and I'm not so tired, and I want to go over, hop real quick to the after party on ABC and watch that. So that's it for this video. Let me know down below what was the most shocking moments for you? Did you laugh? Did you cry? When did you laugh? Did you cry? How did you feel now that the show is over? What are your thoughts? What are your opinions? Please let me know down below in the comments. And if you would like for me to make a video about some of the questions and answers that we still don't have, do me a favor and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, guys, toodles.